1914. The world is humming along with shiny new gadgets, fashionable hats, and a certain sense of progress. The peak of civilization, really. But hey, let's start a war. Because honestly, what could go wrong? It wasn't exactly a surprise. People had a feeling a big old war was coming. You know, France wanted some of its stuff back that Germany had borrowed a while ago. Germany was getting all grabby-eyed at everyone's stuff, and oh yeah, they were building this impressive, shiny navy that made the British feel uncomfortable. Classic imperial drama. Now these two empires were strutting around thinking they were the coolest kids on the block. But the people living under them? Not so much. A lot of them were over it, and some were even declaring independence with a little help from their friend, Russia. So everyone was talking behind each other's backs like a high school drama, and it was about to blow up. Then, military technology had done some growing up since the last big war, and suddenly everyone was way too excited to test their shiny new toys on each other. Cue the Archduke. In the land of Austria-Hungary, which sounds as fun as it was, some Serbs and Bosnians were seriously not thrilled about living there. So Archduke Franz Ferdinand, being the bright fellow he was, decided to take a nice open-top drive through Sarajevo. You know, in an era where cars could break down every 2 minutes, and everyone knew where you'd be. What could go wrong? Well, some people had other plans. A bunch of assassins threw bombs at his car, but guess what? They missed. They ended up blowing up a bunch of officers behind him, which, awkward. So the Archduke decides to hide, right? No, he doesn't do that. He goes back out for a second round of, let's visit the injured officers in the hospital. Because that's totally safe, right? And here's the real kicker. His driver takes a wrong turn and, bam, ends up right in front of one of the failed assassins who, surprise, shoots the Archduke. So Austria-Hungary's feeling pretty peeved about this, and naturally, they blame Serbia, because why not? They go to their BFF Germany and say, hey, we're declaring war on Serbia. Germany's like, you go, we got your back. Then Austria-Hungary sends Serbia a ridiculously long list of demands. Serbia's like, nah, not gonna do that. And boom, war. Now, Russia's pals with Serbia, so they're in too. And Russia's got this French buddy who's like, oh, we got you, buddy. And before anyone can blink, everyone's declaring war on everyone else. Even Montenegro's like, I'm in. Now about Britain. They're like we're kind of neutral, but also, maybe we'll just hang out and see how things go, friend. France asks, hey, Britain, you gonna help us? And Britain's like, maybe? Eventually, though, Britain's like, fine, we're in. Because Germany invaded Belgium, and Belgium was neutral, which was a huge faux pas. You just don't do that. But why does Germany invade Belgium? Oh, just a minor detail. They need to get to France faster. Because, plot twist, they've got this plan. They'll march their army through Belgium, avoid France's super fancy border forts, and get to Paris in, like, no time. Simple, right? Well, Belgium's not exactly thrilled to be a speed bump on Germany's European road trip. They put up a good fight. In fact, they're so good at fighting back that they slow the Germans down. Cue Britain's entrance with a massive, you're not invading our friends, buddy. And now Germany's got a whole new headache. But hey, it gets worse for Germany. They keep pushing through Belgium, committing a bunch of atrocities, wearing spike helmets and skulls on their uniforms, really not helping their PR. And now the whole world's like, who's the bad guy again? And that's when the propaganda machine kicks into high gear. Meanwhile, over in the United States, President Woodrow Wilson is playing the peacekeeper role, trying to get everyone to just, you know, chill out and hug it out. But the catch is, there's a pretty large German-American population that's initially super excited about Germany winning this thing. That is, until they hear about the whole invading neutral countries thing and the mood shifts. Let's talk uniforms, shall we? At the start of the war, the French, ever the fashion-forward folks, sent their troops out in bright blue uniforms and red pants. Easy to spot, right? Too easy. The Germans had no trouble picking them out, especially when the French marched in neat little columns like it was 1814. Spoiler alert, that doesn't end well. Both sides were playing an old-school game with new-school weapons, And as the war raged on, everyone had to rethink their entire approach. The French, Germans, and Brits all had to update their uniforms, strategies, and basically how to survive in the modern world of war. And over in Russia, they were all so ready to go to war. In fact, they were way ahead of schedule, which really threw Austria-Hungary off. Austria-Hungary was like, hold up, we've got this under control. But spoiler alert, they did not. Russia was all up in their business before they could even blink, and it didn't help that Austria-Hungary's military genius, this handsome fellow right here, was a little out of his depth. Austria-Hungary was getting its butt kicked by tiny Serbia. Serbia, tiny but mighty. But the Germans were doing better in the north, wiping out the Russian army like it was no big deal. Back on the Western Front, the Germans almost had Paris in their hands. Almost. But just as everyone thought the Germans were about to win, boom, the French said, "Hold on, we're not done yet." They counterattacked, and the Germans found themselves in a bit of a pickle. They had to retreat, and both sides dug in. A few months of fighting later, they ended up in a stalemate. You know, classic trench warfare. Trench warfare. It's a lot like this. Two sides, two lines of trenches. No man's land in the middle, where, guess what? You don't want to be. Artillery shells, lots of them. Soldiers charging across open land, getting mowed down by machine guns. You don't get a medal for bravery, you get a medal for survival. Living in the trenches was basically a nightmare. Mud, rats, disease, the smell of rotting bodies, and zero comfort. And for some reason, the generals thought it was a great idea to keep throwing soldiers into this hellhole for years. It's honestly a miracle that anyone survived. And that's how the Great War turned into a whole new kind of disaster.